Hey, welcome back. What's up, Canada and beyond? I hope all of you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grannies and gators, are having an amazing afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you might be tuning in from. We are, after all, an internationally viewed program. It is Friday, June 7th, 2024. And do you have any idea what the clowns are doing around the world? Every day is a brand new day, and on Fridays we bring our friend Bryce Wade in to talk about bankers, bandits, bullion, and bucks, the things that we're not necessarily paying attention to in the financial sector, and all of the conspiracy goonery that's going on that affects the financial sector. And just in a brief moment before the show, Bryce, sounds like you guys have been running off of your feet lately. I think more and more people are cluing in to the shenanigans and the absurdities and the insanity and looking to protect themselves with precious metals. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the point of why we get together every Friday to talk about these kinds of things. And for full disclosure, we don't care where you get your precious metals and material and protection from. But if you don't know of anybody, by all means, reach out to Bryce, or you can find a link on the whatsupcanada.org website where you can get somebody that can honestly and genuinely help you get all of the answers that you need, whether it's to do with your portfolio, your retirement savings fund, purchasing, selling, whatever it is to do with anything like that. If they don't have the answers, they will find somebody, and I'm pretty sure they got all the answers. I don't think they have to go looking too often. So, welcome back, Bryce. What's been the highlight of your adventures this week? I hear it's a good time to buy silver today. I heard that it was an opportune time today. I'll just leave it at that and let you talk about money because I'm the dummy.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Ben. It's always a pleasure. So there's a whole bunch happening right now. We saw a little pullback in the market today for precious metals, which means buy the dip. And so I can sometimes be accused of being a gold bug, which I have kind of turned into just because of the trajectory of the world. But I just put a bunch more money in literally today because of the price drop. And let me explain why for a second on why the price of silver and gold are still going to go up despite this pullback. And basically what is happening right now is in general, but so take the drop in price, put that aside for a sec. So what's happening in general is in the markets is the manipulation, right? So there's a huge amount of manipulation in the market. I can get into why if you want, but let me just overview it with the people with money do stuff that isn't good for us, and there's a huge demand for it. Period, for industrial and monetary purposes. So there's a massive demand in China. There's just too much there to get into right this second. But ultimately, there's a massive demand in the market for precious metals right now, all across the world, and the supply of silver is going down. So in the next, I think 5 years. So I went to the VRIC. I think I mentioned this on another episode, but I went to the VRIC, which is the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference at the beginning of the year, and basically one of the speakers there said that there's basically 37 mines worldwide that produce silver. And there's only a handful of those that are silver only. And in the next 5 years, I think we're going down to 36, and then a couple of years after that, we're going down to 34, something like that. And we're not going up. So there's nothing replacing that output, right? And so I think there's about 1 billion ounces of silver per year that are produced, and so demand is starting to outstrip Sorry, it's the opposite. There's a billion ounces of silver demand, and I think there's only about 800 million in supply. And so that difference, that gap, is that's demand, right? So that pushes prices up. And so what is ultimately happening right now is the all of the exchanges, so the COMEX, the LBMA in London, are all being drained. There's a lot of stuff that's going to China, but there's a lot going into central banks. There's a lot going into private hands. And what will ultimately happen, and I can guarantee this, that at some point in the future, people are going to run out of what's available. This happened previously. It's happened many times before, and it's going to happen again. And when that does happen, that's when silver goes and skyrockets. And so the draining of all of the exchanges is one of the major things that's happening right now. And this is being done by the people in the know. And so I tell people all the time, if you think that something is going to be in high demand, you don't want to be last. You want to be first. That includes money, that precious metals, food, assets, farming equipment, farm real estate. It literally does not matter what the thing is. If you know that something is going to be in high demand, be first, not last.
It's these things, these cycles repeat, and when we were maybe kids, or our parents were young, we were kind of in the heyday of the charade and fraud of fiat currency, paper money, and these kinds of systems. So
Yep.
there wasn't this draw on people to have personal volumes of gold and silver stockpiled. Some people did, incidentally, but it wasn't a draw on the availability for personal possession, personal use, personal consumption of those kinds of things. But right now, when I look around, there the advancements in the tech sector, the lack of confidence in the financial sector, the push, the global or the other side of the planet's push to a commodities backed currency.
Yeah.
These are the things that have taken what took 50 years to get to a level of interest. Well, that level of interest has gone 10 times in the last 5 years. And so people are starting to look ahead on this, and for a lot of different reasons. But these are the considerations that we didn't have to compete against when we were trying to buy, an ounce of gold or an ounce of silver 5 or 10 years ago. We didn't have all of these other influences on there. So this trend is only going to escalate, I think. And this is, partly in part why people are starting to look at other precious metals in commodities. Why the massive increase in thefts in copper. You know, copper is the thing that you could buy when you should have bought silver 25 years ago now, kind of thing. So we're seeing a broader interest, for a different range of reasons, I think, in that sector than what we did or would have thought of 10 years ago.
Yeah, and commodities in general, you got to understand that, like, all our civilization. So I think I've used this expression before, is that you got to think of society like, and civilization specifically, like a spider web. So civilization is in the middle, and on the edge, holding up that spider web, is all these core things. So there's food, water, manufacturing, energy, communication, banking, healthcare, all of these different things that make modern civilization work, right? And one of the key components of modern humanity is the materials to build everything else. So you need materials and processing of materials to get into processing and create the stuff that we use and require and want every day, right? And one of the things that's happening in general is the manufacturing base of what we use in civilization is moving right now. And so we used to be a fairly self-sufficient, just in general in the West, because it was all here, it was all made here, and globalization ripped that apart, took that internationally, and now it's moving all over Asia right now, where it was in China before. And so that really allowed the rise of China to happen. So remember, whenever you're like, those damn Chinese, which I say all the time, which is because they're communist and they're awful, an awful group of people that are destroying lives left,
Well,
right,
the
and center.
government is, the CCP itself is,
Yeah,
and
that's what I
anybody
mean.
that supports it. But
Nothing against the Chinese,
right,
but I have everything against their government, just like I have a whole bunch of things against our governments as well, right?
yep.
But the point that I'm making is that the rise of the Chinese Communist Party and China as it is today was facilitated by the wealthy oligarchy in the West. So
Yep.
never forget who allowed that to happen.
We take a real hard look at and point fingers at the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, the Bilderberg groups, and
Mhm.
and all of these entities that control the world. When the reality of it is those are all just the covers, the fronts, the wrapping paper for the rich people that actually live here. They are of Canadian and American origin, and people underestimate the level of Canadian wealth involved in the cabal, and who actually pulls the strings on a lot of that. You know, it's easy to look at the oligarchs in the U.S. and talk about the trillionaires and billionaires. Well, there's a bunch of families in Canada that are a whole lot older, a whole lot richer, and a whole lot more discreet than any of the bandits in the USA. But this is you know, digressing a little bit. This is one of the reasons why we have Canada is the show pony for Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and their Fourth Reich. And the point that I want to make towards this is why they fear us so much. We're really down in numbers viewing tonight simply because Facebook has absolutely shut down streaming on my platform. And anybody that tries to share my stream on platform anywhere on the Facebook platform anymore is going to get this content does not comply with their community standards. So we're missing about 80% of our audience on our show tonight because people, they are controlling out of sheer fear and desperation conversations like this that we're having. So I'm going to ask everybody out there, this banner running across the bottom of the screen here, likes to subscribe and share. This is a plea, and I'm going to invite everybody uh, uh, to send a message to a friend, send a private message and say, hey, are you a follower of What's Up Canada? They've been shut down. Connect with them on Rumble, please. We miss that community. This information is relevant for everybody. I'm allowed to post pictures on Facebook. I can post comments on What's Up Canada on Facebook, but I am just not allowed to stream, and any streams of ours that get shared there will be removed. So this is a community symbiotic effort, guys. We can't do this without you, and we hope that the information we provide to you lets you guys do things that you couldn't do without us. That's the trade-off.
Yeah.
So that's the maintenance part of it out there, guys. They are really hitting us hard on all of this. I mean, finances aren't the only things that we talk about on this channel. We talk about a lot of the things that are leading to the financial crisis as well. The foreign interference and manipulation, um, apple cart that's hit the ditch this week, I think might be a big opportunity for us to start, knocking over some dominoes that take over some other dominoes. And the thing that encourages me about this discussion this week is not everybody is only pointing the finger at China in this foreign interference and manipulation. We haven't got to the juicy stuff yet, but we're, I think, hitting the Overton window where we can start to take a look at look, China isn't the only bad guy out there that's influencing our country, that's infiltrated our country, and is creating economic havoc in our country. And the ones that are pointing the finger at a couple of bad actors are doing so to cover themselves up, and it ain't working so well as that broomstick riding used up head Christopher Freeland is figuring out this week.
Yeah. Did you see the clip with her? We should have
Uh,
loaded it up actually.
oh, go ahead and play it. I played
Oh,
a.
I don't have it handy. Like I saw
Oh,
it earlier. I saw it earlier today, and I should have saved it. I probably saved it on my
Uh,
Instagram
I,
somewhere.
I think everybody has dug into this, and it's not going away. Names are coming out, but what I want to shift the discussion to is not who's been compromised, but who's doing the compromising. And that, I think, exposes a whole lot more of them to, being taken having a harder look taken at them, and exposing the other places and entities of unelected origin that infiltrate and influence our government, our elections, our entire future is being meddled with by China, as well as Switzerland, as well as Davos, and all of those guys. And we can't just point the finger at one, because all we're doing then is protecting the other syndicates. This is something that we have to really dig into and sink our teeth into, and not let get away from us.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be, and I agree with you. Just to preface this, so I think what needs to happen ultimately is and I think you hit the nail on the head with this statement. So I say it a lot now, is that the answer to globalization is localization. So whenever I talk to people now publicly, and I just did a presentation to the independent BC people that are trying to help independent MLAs get elected in the BC election that's happening, because the BC election is actually going to have a big effect on Canadian politics for a variety of reasons for the foreseeable future, not the least of which because it's actual the first time a conservative was elected potentially in 40 years. So besides that fact, for a second, but one of the important things that I think everybody needs to really realize is there is enemies of our people and our freedoms and our rights, both foreign and domestic. And so if you are a government official that is working with a foreign entity against Canada or Canadians, that is the definition of treason. Okay, so let's just put that out there for a second. And what I kind of like about this happening right now is people are starting to get that lexicon through their brain. Whereas if somebody is attacking our country, and we are at war now in a variety of different ways, right? If somebody is coming to attack us, destroy us, kill our people, steal our stuff, like that is war. That is what that is, right? And so what people need to realize and internalize is that you need to be part of the solution. You need to get organized with the people in your physical constituency and start to generate opposition to this. And the only thing that really is gonna, I think, so prevent prevent a total collapse of our civilization is people getting the pitchforks out and be like, "Listen, asshole, if you don't straighten up and fly right, then you're gonna have a problem real quick." Because if we don't have the ability to discuss these ideas openly and have a discussion, what are we going to do about this problem, and decide peacefully what's going to happen, the only thing after that is violence. Like, I'm not advocating for that, because I don't
100%.
want that, right? And so just to make that really clear, I am not advocating for that. But what I am advocating for is that there has to be consequences, legally or otherwise, for the people that are transgressing against our people. And the mere fact that the Liberal Party refuses to release names, even investigate it, and they're just like, "We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We got it covered," is absolutely unacceptable. And anybody that is even defending it, there's that idiot woman from the Liberal Party that's like, "Oh, that's just a conservative thing." Like, absolute gaslighting. We're talking about treason and people like trying to destroy Canada from within as one of the government officials, and you think this is a joking matter? Like, why are you even in the government? Like, it's just disgusting, man.
It 100% is, and this is, knowing what I know and having exposed what I have over the course of the last number of years, and waiting for the Overton window to open on some of these discussions. I'm really liking that term and that mindset, in compartmentalizing the discussions that I'm having these days, because that is the difference between people accepting it or completely rejecting the discussion. Is it in the window? And now we have opened this window where we can start to address some of these things and ask and demand hard answers to hard questions that 3 months ago would have been completely dismissed. And right now, every one of these meat muppets is contemplating the next election, the next cycle of baton passing with the endeavors that they're all involved in. So this is why I want, as much as I want to know who's compromised, I want to know even more so who's doing the compromising, because that
Well,
isn't
it's
the only
China.
meat muppet. That isn't the only meat muppet that they have compromised. If they have
Yeah.
compromised one at one level, they have compromised others at other levels over periods of time. These aren't, these are things that don't go away. And then when you start to connect that to, and this is the bigger question, people are starting to use the correct terminology: genocide, murder, treason, to address legitimate discussions, and they need to be had in those contexts, because a lot of any society that refuses to prosecute its own is a tyranny. That is by definition tyranny. But the one that scares me is we have members of parliament that, and I think this is why the opposition as well is going to limit their demand and their pressure on answers for this because it takes down a whole bunch of them as well. Just hypothetically, if there's a federal member of parliament who is whether they're uh, part of the health panel or the opposition, the critics of the health panel, and they spend 15 years working in the lab, a bioweapons lab, and don't ask a single question about the supposed alleged pandemic that we had, but has their names on the patents of the equipment that they use for the solution, and only screams about how many jobs can we get into people, full well knowing what the Wuhan infiltration was in Winnipeg. They won't let those names out. They arrested
It's
not
treason.
just those two
It's literally
scientists,
treason.
but their whole team as well got
Yeah.
arrested. They're now back working in Wuhan, and we've got members of parliament that worked there as well that are completely pretending to be stupid to what is going on, but will pitch a buck from you and working hard for you in Ottawa. When to me that is the most diabolical treason of all. It's easy for us to get lost in the finger pointing, and that's the point that I want to make. Is there are way more of them compromised than only the ones that they are pressing for names for
Oh
now. And
yeah.
I think if we look hard, and that's where we need to point to the discussion is point at is demanding who's doing the compromising and
Yeah.
what are the benefits from it, because that connects into the pharma syndicate, the bioweapons program, the health control of Wuhan leprechaun ghoul. This is all part and parcel of it. You know, we played a video here, and I'll let you rant about this and make the segue to it, about Theresa Tam the other day, encouraging all world leaders on international news to support Taiwan's efforts in the pandemic treaty endeavor that they're working so hard together for. Uh, this is just
Health.
total absurdity. Um, and we literally have Gollum, a Wuhan Gollum, controlling a bioweapons program because it's no longer health by any definition, and they're all playing different parts of hiding it and pretending to fight over it. In my opinion.
Yeah,
So
and
no.
yeah, and if you could bring up my screen for a second, I think this meme actually really well encapsulates what we're kind of dealing with now, because we've been overlooking this or permitting this for quite a while. So first we overlook evil, then we permit evil, then we legalize evil, then we promote evil, then we celebrate evil, then we persecute those who still call it evil. And we're getting to the point where, and if C63 ever passes, which I'm sure it will, unless we do something about it, we are going to get to the point where calling out the evil that it is going to be illegal. And this is why I kind of talk like this and put this in such stark terms, is because we're running out of time. Like we don't have infinite time to fight this. This is a war that's being fought on every single level, on every single aspect of society: energy, food, legal, health, international trade, bio warfare. Like it's literally everything. It's a war. It is a war for the future of our species. And if we lose forever. That is what the war. That's what's at stake. Is you and everybody that you care about loses and you become a slave or you're dead. That is what is at stake in this war. And so to get to the point where everybody is on that page, that's kind of why I talk the way that I do. Is that, listen, I'm invested in this for not. So I'm not having kids anymore. Like I made that decision a long time ago. But ultimately, I still live in this world, and I don't want to live in this bullshit world. We should be, investigating the stars and shit instead of fighting each other in a nuclear war for the survival of our species. For God's sakes. But anyways, the segue into the thing that I want to make a point about is this. And so you mentioned Taiwan, okay? And so there's a major thing that's happening in Taiwan right now. So that Taiwan is one of the most important countries on the planet for a variety of reasons, but not least of which is their manufacture of semiconductors. So they basically manufacture all of the high-end chips on the planet. They have about 80% market share for all high-end chips on the planet. Okay, so that's every cell phone. That's is anything high end, high tech is basically manufactured at TSMC because they are by far the best. They're the highest level. They use American technology, and Taiwan is the manufacturer of this high level technology. So the CHIPS Act that caused Nvidia to skyrocket to more than $1 trillion company in the space of a few years. That is expressly because if that factory in Taiwan, and there's only one, if that factory in Taiwan stops for any reason for any amount of time at ever, the global economy instantly just is instantly collapses because they are so intrinsic and so important to the global logistical system and the production of technology that it is just catastrophic. I can't even put into words how bad that would be for our economy. And so what they're trying to do is move that manufacturing facility to the US where it's somewhat safer and not like on China's doorstep. But that's one of the things that's happening. And so recently, and this year is a big year for elections across the world, and one of them was in Taiwan, which is a very important one. It was about 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week actually. And that so right after it happened, China put out a blockade. Essentially, it wasn't a full blockade, but they did a big military drill to surround Taiwan and be like, "Hey, you guys, we don't like that you're potentially being an independent country, even though that they are." And China's never the CCP has never controlled them ever, so they've been an independent country since the end of the World War II, essentially, right, in all but name. Really in name as well, but there's basically the idea in the mainland China that that's still part of mainland China, even though they're not in
Well,
any way,
it's
shape,
kinda
or form.
like the Hawaii for America.
Yeah,
A lot of really rich, Chinese people have a lot of say in, Taiwan and what happens there, and they're not necessarily on board with with everything that the ZCP party says, so but that's
yeah.
a very complex, situation over there.
Yeah, and so I wanted to bring this up for a couple of reasons. So number one is it's a very stark example of what can and will happen in a democracy if nefarious groups of people take over the legislature. And so in Taiwan, and I like this. These are links that you can go to, but the channel that these two are on is called China Insights. Really, really good channel that does really in-depth analysis of what's happening in China and more importantly why it is happening. Fantastic channel if anybody's interested in learning more about what's happening in China and why. But these two videos in particular specifically talk about what's happening in the Taiwan legislature. And just to give you a quick overview, there's basically three groups of three parties in Taiwan. There's the DPP, which is green, the KMT, which is blue, and that was the historically anti-communist party that actually broke away from China. That was like the Kuomintang that actually fought a civil war on mainland China, and then they escaped and went to Taiwan at the end of the war when they lost. So that's those guys. And then there's the White Party, which I can't remember the name of offhand. They don't really matter, but they're essentially both the KMT and the White Party are now more or less pro-China. So they want to be closer to China and be neutral more or less than they want to move towards the West. The DPP, which is currently in charge and has been for the last number of years, are Western focused and want independence more or less, right? And so what's happening right now is the DPP are in control of the presidency, so they have the executive control. And what's happening in the legislature, which I believe they call the UN or something, I think it's the UN, and what is essentially our parliament. And so the other two parties that working together, not unlike the Liberals and the NDP here, are essentially trying to change laws to benefit them and remove power of the presidency and move all of the power into the legislature, and then basically manage the country from a legalistic point of view and use all of these legal tools like the Communist Party does, like, oh, you're creating mischief, arrested and sent to jail and into the nether region and disappeared forever without charges, essentially. And so what's happening, and ultimately why I'm bringing this up, is if you allow people to control the ability to manage your laws and manage the enforcement of those laws, you are at the behest and at the mercy of those people making good laws. And we as citizens in pretty much all across the Western world have essentially farmed out that responsibility. I trust you, my leader, my politician, to go and act on my behalf. And because there's no accountability and there's no consequences for poor decision making, not representing the people, or straight up corruption and treason, that's not even a line anymore, just as an aside, right? So because that there's no accountability and consequences for this, they are running roughshod over the citizens that they are supposed to be representing and administrating. And so if we allow Canada to to get to that point, which we already pretty much are in that point now, because we're so deep into this. We will not be able to get out. So there's this old saying, and I'll end with this. So there's an old saying that you can vote your way into communism, but you always have to shoot your way out. And we're getting damn close to that being a situation where Canada is no longer a free society at all. It's no longer a democracy at all. And the communism that is infecting the West is in complete control. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're so close that we might as well be. And so this is kind of my pleading to people that watch this, is that if you are against this sort of shit, you have to be active in your community, because just your physical community is what matters, right? There's all sorts of people all over the world that want freedom, want their family to be good and be happy and free and all that sort of good jazz. And if they do nothing, bad people win. So I hope that you take this as a very stark warning that time's running out and you got to do something about it, because if you don't, you lose.
The only thing that I might argue with you on that is the current situation and position of where we're at right now. We are, my platform is literally experiencing the night of the long knives in the Avatar digital universe right now, and I am not the only one. I think it was Monday's show. I covered the CRTC's memo towards the implementation of the Bill C-11 actions, which is ultimately what is doing this to me, is the implementation of more Gestapo silencing of the discussion. So we're still seeing you know Tamara Litch being persecuted on a mischief charge. We're seeing journalists arrested. I don't know that we are that far behind where China is at, or some of these other communist
Taiwan.
fascist regimes are at it. Yeah, except for are we not at the property confiscation level?
Not quite, but they're pushing us in that direction, yes. And that's kind of why I say we're not
The
quite
people
that
that
far.
donated $5 to the truckers convoy had their bank accounts seized. So,
That's lawfare.
on arbitrary whim, we are there.
Yeah.
Whenever they decide that something offends them, to the point where they want to invoke those kinds of things. So, the only I think we're a closer stretch to somebody like me being in a secure lockup like Julian Assange is probably the closer wall than the First Amendment free speech rights that Americans have. I am Canadian. I don't have rights. I have privileges, right?
Yeah.
And I have spoken to that too much. When Bill C-63 hits, the day that's legal, where am I?
Yeah, we're screwed. And this is my point: is that there's certain what do you call not goalposts? There's certain places along the line, whatever you call that. I can't remember
Benchmarks.
the benchmarks. Thank you. So there's certain benchmarks that you have to hit to really be like totalitarian, and we're not quite there yet, which is why I say that. But China is absolutely there. So we're pushing for a social credit system. China already has one. We're pushing for AI controlled, surveillance state. China already has that. We're not quite there yet, although we're moving in that direction. So this is why I'm saying is that we're almost to the point where there's a point of no return. Because once China hit that level, it didn't matter what you did. It didn't matter who you are. It didn't matter if you were following the law. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. If somebody decided that you were a problem, you were removed. And we're not quite there yet, but we're close. And if we get there, we will absolutely be there. And it will be very difficult to go back if we ever could.
When you go to the optometrist and they're turning different dials in different directions and you
Yeah,
see things
5 or
differently.
6.
Yeah, I think when we look at the one and it identifies the communism, and then all of a sudden we click in the other one and things get a little bit fuzzy, because if we close the other eye, then we identify the fascism. When we open on both, here we are screwed in every capacity, because no matter which eye you close, you got fascism or communism, and at the end of the
Both.
day, it's it's not like we can point just at Justin Trudeau and say he did it. It's been generations
Yeah.
of the good life that made us soft and trusting because it doesn't affect us. We're doing okay,
It's
right?
the bread and circus show, man. Everybody's got bread, and we're at the circus. And as long as you got bread in your belly and a circus to watch, hey, everybody's happy until you're not. And there
And
was the
what are the most profitable industries on the planet? Music, Hollywood, pro sports. The bread and circus is doing just fine, while people um,
can't buy
are,
gas
are going to be
or food.
killing each other for a can of tuna if we continue on the trajectory we're on.
Yeah, and there's I don't know if it's an old saying, but there was something that I learned from history is that Rome was still having the Colosseum up until the day it collapsed. No, not the day, but like pretty much until it collapsed. There was hey, come to the arena and watch stuff happen, right? Like until it was the last day, they continued on that decline, right? And this is why it frustrates me to no end that people say we have no power. Bro, we have all the power. It's just that nobody knows that they have it and nobody can do anything with it because we're not organized. And that's the ultimately the thing that I try to impress upon people is like it doesn't matter if you're pissed, it doesn't matter if somebody else is pissed, it doesn't matter if somebody else has power. If you are organized and you have skills, assets, and resources to deploy against the problem, you can do that. It's a technical challenge, not a it's not a political or a theological or a spiritual challenge. It is a technical challenge of logistics and choices and moves on a game board. Right? We are playing the game, the Game of Thrones, and if you don't win, you die.
It's the
As the
Game
saying
of
goes.
Thrones. It's chess. It is the Hegelian dialect.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Ready Player One. It's but It's it's all of it rolled up into one, and that's why it's so challenging for us because we almost have to change our glasses, our lenses,
Yeah.
how we look at every direction and every situation, and see beneath that, and everybody's squabbling over the first thing that they see and not understanding the connection, the soft spot, uh, and that's I think one of the challenges is that we getting past that, the emotional responses, and getting organized. And I don't use the word unified. I am really, really learning to dislike, even perhaps despise the word unity. The consider well, last night's show was kind of doing a bit of an expose how am being extorted under the term of unity. If I don't join in their cult and provide unity and take orders from them, then I am an enemy of the people and will be treated as such. Pardon me.
Hey, you
That's
drink
how
the
you
Kool
see
Aid, or you got to drink the other
unity.
Kool Aid that kills you.
Right. Anytime anybody says to me, unity or else, I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
DFY.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, idea is so good they may have to make them mandatory.
And the sad part of it is that it immediately removes every last relevant, potentially good idea and piece of credibility that they and legitimacy that they may have had coming to the table. But the instant I hear those words, as every other Canadian out there that has his head screwed on straight and is not getting drunk on somebody's Kool-Aid, will probably have the same three-letter response accompanied by a laugh, and
Yeah,
so, this
feel you,
this
man.
is, but it's the cooperation, there's never gonna
Collaboration,
be
organization. That's why I use organization because it works on any scale. You don't have to be unified. You just have to be organized. You don't have to agree. You just have to get shit done. That's the ultimate challenge.
exactly, there's always gonna be a cause and a purpose and a crisis and a situation, and that's never ending, but, taking a look at things is what we work smarter, not harder, work like fox, not like ox, and, I think with the sniper mindset, I can do more with one bullet than a bunch of monkeys can with a million. So that's kind of the way I think about things.
That's a good analogy. I have
Um,
to steal that one.
and I mean, it's just how I look at this, and so this is why it bothers me when people, you say World War III is coming. No, folks, we've been in the midst of World War III for at least 4 years now. What you're referring to is a static war or a
Mm,
nuclear war, which there is no
kinetic
such
war.
thing as a nuclear war because there can be a nuclear event, nuclear strikes, but at the end of the day, the world's over in 15 minutes anyways, so there is no prolonged warfare, when you
Mm.
add the word nuclear to the discussion, so
I don't know if I totally agree with that because I mean, technically, World War II was a nuclear war because that was the first time that a nuclear device was ended. And there's so one of the lines of reasoning that we've been fed for a long time is kind of what you're talking about, which is mutually assured destruction. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% true because we've never experienced an actual nuclear war where both parties are firing strategic nukes at each other. What if nuclear war is just tactical nukes and they only destroy a brigade or a town or whatever, but they don't go strategic, and so the enemies of humanity are and well the North Koreans and for sure the Chinese and probably the Russians as well to some degree are planning for fighting a nuclear war with us, i.e. the West, and want to survive that war, maybe not necessarily win that war, because there's a saying that an authoritarian will burn the ashes of their country down. They will burn their country
Yep,
down
they'll
to
burn
rule
it
over the
down just
ashes.
to say they didn't lose, exactly what
To rule over
Zelensky
the
is.
ashes, yeah.
Yeah, to rule over the ashes, yeah. Zelensky's doing it right now, Trudeau's doing
Yeah.
it here right now in Canada, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't trust a single one of these monkeys or muppets
No.
to test that theory because, the when I look at who's out there, who's the adults in the room, and which side of the conflict I might consider might want to be on. 10 years ago, I would have said, "Yeah, I'm happy right here where I'm at," but I don't say that anymore. If it's going to come to that, I think we're in the wrong spot, and we're definitely not. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
That's a rabbit hole for sure. But I'll leave off that rabbit hole with this. Regardless of what the possibility is, you can't assume and you can't prepare for none of it happening. You have to have some sort of preparation to be like, hey, if a nuke does drop, and I think the probability is far more than zero personally. And so if you're going to be like, hey, if that happened, what would I do? If that's the question and like I have no plan, no idea and no preparedness, well, you're screwed if that happens, right? I can answer that question with I have got somewhat of a plan, somewhat of resources, and somewhat of a way to get the fuck out so that I can at least survive the ensuing chaos that would follow that, right? Because if a nuke is dropped at any point, I guarantee you, in anger, I mean, like it's not just a test. It's like, hey, there was a nuke dropped on Ukraine or Russia or the US or God forbid us for whatever reason, right? As soon as that happens, everybody knows all of the ridiculous things that they have in their head about what's probably going to happen or not going to happen or is going to happen or whatever is out the door because something like that happened. And as soon as that everybody understands that, it is I need what I need for myself and my family immediately, and I'll do whatever it takes to get that. And that ensuing chaos is the real danger to the economy and society, is because our society isn't designed to be able to deal with that sort of thing. It's just not. Like if I was like, hey, I don't have more than a week of food in my house, which I know people that are absolutely in that camp. I'm gonna go to the store right now. Well, if there's like 50,000 people going to that store doesn't have food for 50,000 people for a week of food. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know who is it, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Rocky Balboa. Everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
That was Mike Tyson.
I thought it was Mike.
Yeah,
And that's literally the reality of it.
yeah.
So when I think back to the 15 years I spent in fire and rescue and everybody was trained, everybody had a plan until something went sideways and everybody thought they were good until they weren't. And everybody, was walking around like, oh, they were all that in a bag of chips until they weren't. And that's the situation that over the couple of years, for every week that goes by, I know that there is somebody that's a little bit more prepared and a little bit more prepared and a little bit more prepared. So we haven't come into this absolutely blindly, and I think we underestimate the numbers of us out there that are a little bit more than non-prepared, and it's going to be, it's like Neil Oliver said the other day. And I was listening to a podcast with Douglas Murray today. The world is shifting back to the right, but it's gonna get ugly
It is.
before we get there.
This is I think a very important thing for everybody to realize. Okay, whenever there is transition in history, is that a soft, easy, smooth
It's
transition?
gonna hurt.
Never. It is never a soft transition, because what you have is essentially either a consciousness upgrade or a consciousness downgrade, right? And we've been going through a consciousness downgrade for the last bunch of decades, essentially. And now, if we're going to go a consciousness upgrade the other direction, well, you have to fight ideologically and intellectually as well as physically at some point whatever you're trying to push back on, because like there's this idea for libertarians that like and I agree with it to some degree, that is my right to swing my fist ends where your nose begins, right? That very simple idea of I can do whatever I want as long as I don't hurt other people. Fully on board with that. But what is beside that point is that there's a whole bunch of people that say no, that's wrong. I do have the right to swing my fist, and smash your face if I think that you're doing something wrong. And that could be for any reason that I have in my head. I'm like, no, that's a great reason. You're a Nazi, or you're right wing or left wing or whoever or whatever. Like, no, I should totally punch you out because that's the right thing to do, right? Regardless of what the person has done or anything. It's just like, I believe I'm right. That's good enough, right? And that's kind of the mentality that the insane far left has now, is that no, we have to destroy people's lives to give them the consequences that they are never going to get. So we have to be the arbiter of that justice, even though the demented sense of justice that they have doesn't include reality or justice.
Well,
So
I think we have a hard time admitting how easily we've been duped and fooled by labels over the years, and I think it was John, John Mearsheimer I was listening to had talked about, when you look at the foundations of the political ideology that we're up against here right now, being the progressive capital L liberals is almost interchangeable with old school communism
yeah,
and Marxism, right?
it
And
is.
so
Absolutely it is. Yeah.
and
That's why I
that's
call them the
where
Communist Party of Canada.
yes, and that's where they have this I'll hit you if I want, and that's my right mindset and mentality, because you're not complying to the hive. That's the downgrade. When you talk about whether we're going to have an upgrade or a downgrade, we had that upgrade living in a society that was, mutually society. The social contract was the Christian Judeo
Meritocratic.
values. We didn't have to be a Christian, but as long as you played by the rules
Yeah,
of that nation, you could do swing your fist so long as you didn't hurt anybody or hit
exactly.
anybody. And
Yeah,
so that was the upgrade. And now we're seeing this shift under rebranding into a hard left downgrade. And we're going through wash, rinse, repeat. The problem, reaction, solution of the Hegelian dialect, again
again.
manifesting into exactly which everybody said never again, never again, never again.
And
And
everybody forgot.
I think it was Jordan Peterson actually who said Canadians would have made the best Nazis.
Yeah. Well, we already see it happening all over the place, and what we
100%.
saw in COVID proved that. And
Yeah,
so, and there's a good saying that's like, hey, if you ever wondered what you would do in Nazi Germany just before the rise of Hitler,
just
you
look
know now
around.
because you're doing it.
Yep.
So I
So
know where I stood on that, and I said, and I remember, and one of my favorite things to do as a kid, I loved history, even though like I didn't like war, I loved learning about war and why it happened, how it happened, the tactics, all that sort of stuff. So I used to watch History Channel all the time before they got insane and said all the insane stuff they do now. But like it was always the tactics of war and the reasoning for what was happening and how things worked that really interested me, right? And it was really, I don't know, disconcerting, I guess, that the amount of people that were just going along with it. I'm like, how could that happen? And me as a kid in Canada, I'm like, that could never happen here. We're so advanced, we're so cool and knowledgeable. We're so much smarter and advanced and all that. And now, like 30 years later from where that was 30 years ago, I'm like, wow, nobody has advanced. Like with the same idiots in control, same stupid structures that have been around forever. I'm like, no wonder nothing changes, because these same idiots are still in control.
I'm gonna let out a little bit of a geek secret secret that I probably have never actually talked about with anybody. But yeah, I think I'm a 43-year commemorative member of the War Games and Strategies Club.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Which
that's
game?
been
So
you know, my
like Axis
basic
and Allies or
life.
something like that?
Pardon me.
What sort of wargaming?
Just it's a tactical, strategic conflict and policy and treaty making, negotiation,
Oh, really? That's
a,
cool.
and you at a very large scale.
Nerd.
Yeah, I total nerd when it comes to that, and this is given my personal experience in the training, it just was kind of a natural hobby and pastime that
Yeah,
became a part of it. So this is why I look at things very from not just a strategic military direction
yeah.
that down pat, but over the years and the experience and learning and research to be able to use that and leverage that with the geopolitical situations, financial situations, a lot of the things that have the environmental impacts on conflict resolution, negotiation, policy making, treaty making,
Mhm.
all of those things. So, kind of
So you must
interesting.
just love how all these treaties are getting rolled out in our favor, eh?
Oh, dude, when I get up to that altitude of the discussion, it's kind of a thin room out there of people that actually have a real grasp on the impetus and jurisdiction of so many of those different things.
Yeah.
And kind of a key point on this, and but not entirely accurate, is treaties can only be signed by two sovereign nations. That's it. Well, that depends on which jurisdiction you want to address that conversation from, or which jurisdiction is in question, or which gray area they're working through. But there's so many different things that come into play on that. But and this is where, so to kind of wrap it up into one big giant bow with the escalation of the conflict and da 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 da, I listen to Alex and Alexander Duran a lot, and I tend to agree with them in that this escalation is, it makes no sense what the Democrats are trying to do with escalating this. Yes, it's covering up for Hunter Biden and all of those things, but they would have been far better served by keeping it a demure conflict without without getting into the escalation of it. But so the escalation, I think, was a last ditch strategic effort by the Biden administration to come in a John F. Kennedy Cuban Missile Crisis, save the day, stop World War III, and don't vote for the felon strategy. I think that was their plan in this, but and it's obviously it's not working. The rest of the world is going, well, if you're going to burn the world down, we're not going to be burned down on your side. It's kind of ultimately what's happening. So, part and parcel of this new world order, rules based international order of global hegemony and rule out of their organization was, Klaus Schwab's Great Reset, and this is something that we're all very familiar with. And so there's a comment here that wanted to address, and this is kind of when I have talked for months and months and months about
That is
what
coming.
that is what's coming. This is what they want. They're going to knock down our castle walls and ask us to rebuild them, and they will feed us and house us and clothe us and give us everything we need. As long as we accept this digital ID marker, we can rebuild society, and we can make sure that everybody is looked after, and all of the things will get looked after. All that the trade-off is going to be, they're going to demolish our society and expect us to accept their beads and baubles to rebuild it in a new way where we are absolute slaves,
Yeah.
absolute slaves.
And we're gonna build the prison ourselves, and we're gonna beg to be pushed into it because everything is gonna be such shit. And I've been saying this for a while, right? The central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, microchips, 50-minute cities, right? Those are the 4 pillars of enslavement, right? But to get to that point, right? To get to the point where that looks better than the bullshit that we have right now, they have to make this what we have now such garbage and miserable that we're like, wow, that looks a lot better over there. We better go over there, right? And so to do that, you have to collapse the currency. Because if the money in our pocket is good enough for transactions, and I'm just kind of bringing it full circle to the monetary side of things. So like for us to be pushed into and want that sort of yeah, exactly, yeah, no, what utter nonsense. So for them to roll out that level of enslavement, right? And communists do that. There's like one small step, one small step, one small step, one small step. Now we're too far, and you suck, and it's everything. And so we're almost at that point, right? And
When it's
what
$43 for a box of KD and you're offered a little credit card that's got free tabs on it for you, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But you better do this now because next week it's going to be 48 paper dollars for that box of KD. This is
hmm.
where they're going to have us.
Yeah, and the way that I like to explain this to people is like, listen, here's the deal, okay? You are walking down the street, let's say, and you've got all your money on you, and I come up, I'm like, boom, give me all your money, and you're like, oh, don't hurt me anymore, and I take all your money, and then the next day I walk by and you're walking in the same spot with no money, I'm like, hey, you're having a really rough day. Here's $2 of the like 10,000 that I just took from you. Man, aren't I such a nice guy? Man, you
That's the
should
carbon
really
tax.
well. That's my point, right? Is like they're stealing all of our money, giving a portion of our own money back to us, and say you should be thankful that I'm doing everything that I should for your benefit. Trust me, bro. What utter nonsense! Like it just boggles my mind that people fall for this moronic nonsense. But what it comes down to is people are just so busy trying to survive, they don't have time to look into this, right? We are kind of in a unique position in history where we have the ability of the internet for our mind and our vision and our analysis to go anywhere on any topic at any time for any reason whenever we want, right? And the vast majority of people don't have that option. Like people that got kids, they're trying to raise their kids. People that got debt, they're trying to get out of debt. People that are just trying to be happy, they're on another. They're doing whatever they're doing, just not. So there's a very small subset of people, and then there's that old saying that's like there's 5%, 1% control the 4%, and 90% are asleep, and the 5% is trying to wake up the other 90% to protect from the 1%, and the other 4%, right? And so we are though that essentially 5% of people. They're like, yo, doesn't anybody see this shit, bro? You gotta look at this stuff. It's really important. And everybody's like, yeah, whatever, bro. I'm trying to survive. I got time for that. I've got no money, man.
I was talking with Michelle this afternoon, the trauma practitioner, and you over some disturbing instances that are becoming more and more
Oh yes,
common in
that is coming
schools,
too.
and I said to her, I said, parents are hanging on to their sanity by the thinnest of threads at the manipulation of what's going on in our government. How can we expect them to be of any help to their kids in a lot of cases? So, this is these are some of the ripple effects of some of the stuff that's absolutely going on. But I want to close this off with a reminder, folks, to if you've got questions about finances, now is the time. There's a
And you're
couple of
running out
links.
of time. You're running
Yep,
out of time.
yep. There's a couple of links on whatsupcanada.org. You will probably first hear from Warren, but the guys will answer your questions and they will help you out. And now is absolutely the best time. Tomorrow is not no longer anymore the best time to do this. So now is the best time. But I wanted to add one last little tidbit in there, cliffhanger stuff. We had a whole list of stuff that we were going to talk about getting through today, but we decided to benchmark that so we could do even deeper research on a bunch of those points. And next week, we'll bring you some receipts on some of these discussions that we were just kind of touching on a little bit today. It's been a busy week in all aspects for everybody this week, I think. So,
Yeah,
uh,
And if I could just leave off with one thing, because I think Jacko BC61 there had a really good point, the last one that he made there. So mentally, people are at the max. It's too much, and I think one of the strategies that they're using on this is there's just so much that's happening. There's scandal after scandal after scandal, problem after problem after problem, and thing you got to think about and deal with, and blah 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 blah. And that's kind of the strategy that they're using, is they're just going to overwhelm us and baffle us with so much bullshit that you just can't deal with it. And this is why I always say this: please go and talk to somebody in your personal physical location and start organizing with people. That is literally the only thing that's going to save you, is you have the skills, assets, and resources to organize and deploy against what is coming. Okay. So
100%.
thank you very much.
We've got everything we need. We just got to
Organize.
get it together and put it to work. So thanks a lot, Bryce. Who knows what we'll see by this time next week, but I look forward to having the opportunity to make a little bit more sense out of it for the people out there that are maxed out. Guys, we'll do our best to get the answers for you. So thanks so much, Bryce, and we will see everybody else out there same time, same place next week.
In times of global instability, soaring inflation and massive debt, gold and silver have proven to be unshakable pillars of wealth. New World Precious Metals, based in Calgary, Canada, is a leading international brokerage. We offer an easy, secure, and cost-effective platform for investing in gold and silver, including our international wholesale program and registered retirement savings accounts. Protect your money outside traditional banking with our physical precious metals, privately vaulted outside the banking system, at secure, insured exchanges worldwide. Gold and silver have been trusted assets for generations, with current projections indicating high returns. And with unprecedented demand from governments, banks, and investors, there are now shortages. Precious metals thrive during inflation, geopolitical instability, and currency devaluation. Sound familiar? Now is the time to invest in gold and silver, whether in your international investment account or by transferring registered retirement savings accounts. Experience the security of physical precious metals, combining the safety of physical assets with the flexibility of being like your own bank, offering instant liquidity and a financed line of credit. With precious metals on the rise, don't miss this generational opportunity to protect your wealth. At New World Precious Metals, we ensure your wealth meets its potential. Contact us today and our personal brokers will guide you every step of the way.